Hey, it's Rob with Inyo Pools. Today we're out here to install a 2.7 horsepower variable speed motor on a Hayward Super 2 pump. The pool owner notified us that their current motor, their single speed motor, had died and they were looking for something a little more energy efficient, so we suggested the variable speed motor. So we're going to go ahead and install that and show you step by step how to do it. So let's get started. Alright, the first thing you want to do is make sure the power is off, so you want to turn it off at the breaker. So we have that turned off. Once you do that, we like to release the pressure from the system, help let it drain the water out back to the pool. Okay, so what we want to do is separate the back half of this from the front half. The front half's going to stay plumbed in line, you don't have to mess with any of that. So we're going to remove these 6 bolts and then we'll be able to slide it back. And we're using a 9/16 socket. Alright, once you get the bolts removed, then you can just slide it back. And then we'll disconnect the lines going to the motor. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is remove this bonding wire. So I just got a little 1/4 inch socket. I'll just loosen that up a little bit. I can pull that out, put that to the side. And then we can use that same socket on the back here and remove and loosen these 2 screws to the cap. Just pull the cap off the back. Set that to the side. Alright, now we're going to remove the lines in here. We got the 2 hot lines over here and the ground run up to this green screw, so we're just going to loosen the screws up here and then pull the wires out. Okay, so we got all 3 wires disconnected. Now we'll unscrew this conduit adapter. Go ahead and pull these out. And then we can bring the motor over to a table where it's easier to work on, and I'll put the new motor on. Okay, so we brought the motor out to our workbench. If you're just replacing a motor, you're going to reuse all these parts, all the plastic parts. So these are the tools you're probably going to need. A 7/16 wrench to stabilize the back of the shaft. A socket wrench with a 9/16 socket because there's bolts back here. And then you might need a strap wrench if the impeller is real tough to get off. The first thing you're going to want to remove is this impeller ring, and notice that the wide part actually faces out, so keep that in mind when you're reinstalling it. And then what you want to do is take the 7/16 wrench and drop it in here, turn it, and you'll feel it kind of drop into place. And now it's stabilized. Okay, now the shaft is stabilized. You can spin the impeller off counterclockwise. And again, if that's really difficult, that's where you would use the strap wrench. You could wrap it around the impeller. Alright, with the impeller off, then you can remove the seal plate. And then you'll see those 4 bolts that we'll remove. Okay, then we're just gonna, once you remove the bolt, you can take the motor mounting plate off and give it a tap there. And now you've taken everything that you need off the old motor, so you can take the old motor off to the side and bring over the new motor. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do with the new motor is pop the motor mounting plate back on. We've washed off the dirt and debris, and actually on this motor mounting plate you'll see that it says top, where the top should be. So we'll make sure that's in the right orientation. You slide it back on. Alright, so we're going to put the 4 bolts back in. Tighten that back up to the socket. Alright, so before you put the seal plate back on, we strongly recommend replacing the shaft seal. This is half of the old shaft seal. So you'll want to pop that out from the back. And we'll just use like a little flathead. And then before we put the new one in there, we'll go ahead and wash out any dirt and debris that's in there, clean off the back. Alright, so I mentioned before that this was just half of the shaft seal. The other half is a spring-looking part that would be on the impeller. So you want to remove the old one off of the impeller. If for some reason the metal piece stays on your the shaft of the impeller, you want to remove that. This one came off, so we're good. Alright, so these are the 2 pieces to the new shaft seal. For the Super 2, it's a 201 shaft seal, and actually this one is, we're putting this on a salt pool, so we're going with a heavy duty seal. And when you, before you put this into the plate, make sure you don't touch the white ceramic with your fingers. You don't want to leave any fingerprints or anything on there. So you can kind of get it into place. And then get a towel and press it in. Make sure it's in there nice and flush. Okay, then you can take the seal plate and pop it on the new motor. The next step will be putting the second half of that shaft seal on the shaft of the impeller. But before you do, you want to make sure that you have the right orientation on the shaft seal. So if you notice, there's a shiny side to this spring portion and a dull side. The shiny side is going to touch the white ceramic of the other piece. So we'll slide it onto the shaft of the impeller. And so now you'll see the shiny part facing out, that's going to touch the white ceramic. Okay, so before you can thread on the impeller, you need to stabilize the shaft. And if you notice, it's different than a single speed motor. You actually need a 5/16 Allen wrench, and you'll just slide it in the back here, and you'll see where it needs to go. If you spin the impeller, you'll see the back of the shaft. Alright, so while holding the Allen wrench at the back of the motor, we'll go ahead and spin the impeller on clockwise. And you'll just turn until it starts to, until you see it, you feel it firm with the wrench at the back. You don't need to over tighten it, just enough for it to start turning that wrench in the back. Alright, so we're going to pop the impeller ring back on. Again, it's the wider side out. We're going to put the diffuser back on, and you'll notice that it says top here, so with an arrow pointing up. So put that in the right spot here. Once you get the diffuser back on, you can move the motor back over to the pump housing. Alright, so we replaced the housing gasket and put some silicone lubricant on it, so now we can slide the motor into place. Now we're going to put the bolts back in. Then we're going to tighten them down with a 9/16 wrench, socket wrench. Alright, so now we're going to start wiring up the new motor. First thing we're going to do is take off this cover. So again, we're just going to use our little 1/4 inch socket. Okay. Alright, so there's a couple options for the wires. There's a plug here for the conduit and a plug here. We're going to go in from the side, so we're going to remove this plug. And you won't need that. Then you can feed the 3 wires in. I'm going to thread this into place. Okay, so there's 3 spots on the terminal. We knew from earlier that the 2 black ones are hot. So one will go to L1, one will go to L2. It doesn't matter which one goes to which. And then this white one is the ground. A lot of times it'll be green, but you're going to put it where the ground symbol is. So we got the hot line, one on L1, one on L2, and then we got the ground line on the ground. Then we're going to put the cover back on. Last step in wiring is going to be reattaching the bonding wire. Okay, so before we turn the power back on, the pump, the old motor was connected to the timer, and we're going to keep it that way. But the variable speed motor, the 2.7, has a built-in timer. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the trippers and just leave it connected to the loads. So if we remove the trippers, then if we have it set to on, it's never going to turn off. If for some reason you have like a salt system connected to your timer, connected to the loads, and you want the pump to stay on its own timer, you can move the wires from the loads over the line, so that way the pump always has power. But in this situation, we're not going to rewire anything at the timer, we're just going to remove the trippers. Okay, before we start turning on the pump, we're going to go ahead and prime it. Alright, so we're going to turn it back on at the breaker, and then we can turn it back on at the timer. And then you'll see it, if you've done everything correctly, it'll light up. Alright, we're just going to leave the air relief valve open a little bit until it starts to spray water. Close it. Okay, so we got the pump running at 1800 RPM, and that's enough to keep the flow going on the salt system. So that's good. So we'll run it in its current schedule. We'll check the chlorine level in a couple days, make sure everything's good. If it is, we'll keep the same schedule. If it's not, we'll adjust it. But that's what you want to do. You want to make sure you find that minimum flow rate, because the lower the RPM, the more money you're going to save on your energy consumption. Alright, so we've got the 2.7 horsepower variable speed motor installed, and it's working great. We've got it programmed to run. If you have any questions on this installation or anything else pool related, leave a comment down below or visit us over at inyopools.com. Thank you.